My parents talked for 2 hours about my sister's studio and her grown-up life. I just kept smiling. Then my grandpa asked me, "Where are you living now, sweetheart?" I took a sip of my drink and said, "Top floor, Central Park view. Quiet neighbors, concierge service." My sister nearly dropped her glass. And my mom didn't say a word, just stared. Every family has a favorite. And in mine, it was always Jenna. Always. It didn't matter what I did or how hard I worked. Somehow she was always the headline. As a kid, she couldn't be bothered to clean her room. But when she glued macaroni on paper and called it art, my parents nearly cried. Meanwhile, I was bringing home spelling bee ribbons and math awards like clockwork. And the best I got was "That's nice, honey." Now, let's see what Jenna made today. By the time we were teenagers, I stopped trying to compete. Jenna was the dreamer, the creative, the free spirit. I was the realist, the overachiever, the one who took things too seriously. If she forgot my birthday, it was because her mind was on higher things. If I forgot hers, it was a character flaw. And still, I kept pushing. I got into a good college. She didn't go. I got a job. She started painting in her boyfriend's garage. I got promoted. She got Instagram followers. Every holiday, every family dinner, the same dynamic played out. Jenna got attention. I got asked to help with the dishes. So when she invited everyone to see her first real studio space, this sunlit shoe box in a half-gentrified block of Brooklyn, I braced myself. I knew what was coming. We all arrived on a Sunday afternoon with bags of snacks and bottles of cheap wine. Jenna greeted us barefoot, wearing some sort of linen robe like she was about to start a cult. My parents were immediately enchanted. She gave the tour. Chipped floorboards, cracked windows, secondhand furniture. In a corner she dramatically declared her creative womb. They ate it up. She talked about how rent was a stretch, but she felt aligned here. My mom nodded like Jenna had just quoted scripture for 2 straight hours. They talked about her studio, her big girl life, how brave she was to live without a safety net, how authentic she was for pursuing her dreams. I just sat there with my drink, smiling. No one asked how I was doing, not even once. And then Grandpa spoke. He was halfway through a sparkling water, mostly forgotten in the corner when he turned to me and asked, "Where are you living now, sweetheart?" It was so casual, but the room stopped. I took a sip, looked around, then I said it. Top floor, Central Park view, quiet neighbors, concierge service. It was like tossing a match into a dry field. Jenna's glass slipped. Caught it just in time. My cousin dropped his cracker on the floor. My mom stared at me like she was waiting for a punchline. But I just kept sipping because what none of them knew was that for the past 5 years I'd been building something quietly. Not out of spite, not really, but because I couldn't stand the idea of being invisible forever. I invested when everyone else was panic selling. I bought properties when my friends were still renting. I didn't talk about it because no one ever asked, but now they wanted to know. Suddenly, I was the one they were curious about. My dad asked what floor I was on. My aunt asked if she could see pictures. My mom didn't say much, just sat very still thinking. Jenna kept smiling, but it was different now. Tight. That moment broke something. Not in a dramatic way, but like the sound of a hairline crack in a wall that's been there forever. You don't see it yet, but you know it's spreading. And deep down, I think Jenna realized the rules had changed. But the strangest part, I didn't feel triumphant. Music, I felt calm. For once, I wasn't trying to win. I was just being honest. And it turns out the truth had weight. Heavy enough to shift the entire room. The strangest part was how fast the air changed after that. It wasn't loud, no gasps, no confrontations, just something subtle. The way people started glancing at me more often like I just grown 2 heads like they'd walked past a statue their whole lives. And then one day it blinked. Jenna tried to keep the energy going. She opened another bottle, offered more crackers, started telling a story about a guy she met at an artist residency in Vermont. But nobody was listening the same way anymore. My dad asked twice how long I'd lived in the apartment. My aunt leaned in and whispered something to her husband. My mom, she didn't say anything for the rest of the visit. She just watched me like she was trying to solve a puzzle that used to be a coloring book. We didn't stay much longer after that. I thanked Jenna for the wine, complimented her latest painting, a weird piece involving melted clocks and dismembered dolls, and then excused myself. My mom walked out with me holding her coat tight. She didn't ask about the apartment. Not then. Instead, she said, "You seemed quiet today." I smiled and said, "Just listening." That night, I went home and opened a bottle of red I'd been saving for no reason in particular. I sat on my balcony, watching the lights of the city blink like they had something to say, and I waited. It took less than 24 hours. First, it was Jenna. He texted, "You really waited for your moment, huh?" I stared at it for a while. It wasn't mean, but it wasn't nice either. It was one of those things she used to say when we were teenagers. When I'd get a better grade or someone complimented my outfit, a backhanded comment sharp enough to sting light enough to be excused. I didn't reply. I wasn't mad, just done. 2 days later, I got a call from my mom. She started with small talk. "How's work? How's the weather? I should come by more." Then slid into it. She asked if I'd bought the apartment. I told her yes. There was this short silence, and then she asked what it cost. I told her that too. I didn't round down. She didn't respond right away. Then she said something like, "Well, I suppose you've done well for yourself." No excitement, no curiosity, just a flat acknowledgement, like she was handing out a participation ribbon. Then came the real reason for the call. Her friend Lisa, the one who sold real estate part-time and posted inspirational quotes on Facebook, was thinking of buying a brownstone to flip. Maybe I could talk to her, maybe give her a few tips, since I was doing so well. I agreed out of habit. That's when it started. My uncle messaged me out of nowhere asking if I thought Tesla stock would bounce back. I hadn't spoken to him since my college graduation. My cousin sent me a Google Doc with a business plan for a dog-friendly co-working space. My mom texted again asking how hard it would be to set up an LLC, followed by, "Your father and I were thinking of renting out the garage as an Airbnb. What do you think?" Even Jenna changed her tone. She didn't mention the apartment again, but she started sending oddly philosophical texts. Things like, "Money doesn't make people happy, or "Success looks different for everyone." Once she sent a blurry photo of her studio window with the caption, "Real wealth is sunlight and time." I didn't reply to most of it. What was I supposed to say? This wasn't really about money. It was about how easily people reshuffled the deck the moment they thought I had something they could use. I hadn't asked for this attention. I hadn't flaunted anything. I'd just answered a question, and that was enough. At first, it felt flattering, seeing them suddenly interested, curious, even a little envious. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been upgraded from invisible to useful. One minute, I was the practical, forgettable daughter. The next, I was the family consultant. It wasn't respect. Not completely. It was something else. And part of me already knew this shift wasn't over. Not even close. The real change was just beginning. I'm not sure when curiosity turned into entitlement. Maybe it happened slowly. Maybe it was inevitable the moment they realized I wasn't the version of Edna they'd kept boxed up for years. The questions came first. Texts, emails, a few innocent calls. They wanted to know how I got started, what apps I used to invest, which stocks were hot. Some framed it as wanting to learn. Others jumped straight to what should I buy. I answered a little at first. Nothing detailed. I thought if I gave them just enough, it would satisfy them. I was wrong. The moment they sensed I knew something they didn't, it became desperation, not to understand, but to catch up. Then they started showing up. My parents were first. They said they were coming into the city for my dad's cardiologist appointment. But halfway through lunch, my mom glanced at her phone and said, "We've got time. Maybe we could stop by your place." I hesitated, then agreed. When they arrived, my mom walked in like a realtor. She wasn't admiring. She was assessing. She ran her hand along the marble counter, tested the water pressure, asked if the floors were original. My dad stood by the window, then asked what the unit below mine had sold for. Then my mom said casually, "We've been thinking about getting a small place in the city. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom. Maybe you could help us." I said I was busy but could connect them with friends in real estate. That wasn't enough. "You're the expert," she said. "You figured it out." That night came a follow-up text. Then another the next day, both with listing links, both asking if I could take a quick look. 2 days later, Jenna showed up. No warning. No text. She rang the doorbell at 3 p.m. on a Thursday. She stood there in oversized sunglasses, messy bun, holding a lukewarm iced coffee like she was arriving for a photo shoot. She looked me up and down and said, "So this is it." I said, "Hi," and let her in. She moved slowly through the apartment, barely speaking, glancing into each room like she was imagining herself there. She stood on the balcony for 10 minutes without saying a word. Then she turned and said, "It's not what I imagined. It's more grown up." I nodded. She asked if I had a guest room. I said no, or rather, that I did, but I wasn't offering it. She didn't argue. Before leaving, she paused and said, "It's just weird, you living here. I always thought I'd be the one in a place like this." I didn't respond. A week later, my cousin texted. He was between leases and needed somewhere to crash for a few weeks. He promised he wouldn't be any trouble. I said no. He sent a thumbs up and never texted again. Then my mom messaged once more. This time she asked if I could co-sign a loan. "It's just a small thing," she said. "We're trying to help Jenna get something more permanent for her studio. She's taking it seriously this time." I stared at the message for a long time. No one had asked how I was doing, what I was working on, who I was dating, whether I was happy. They didn't want me. They wanted my stability. The same people who used to smile politely while I talked about my job now treated me like their personal financial hotline. The same sister who once called my life boring now wanted me to fund hers that I didn't know how far it would go. But I had a feeling I was about to find out why the second week of the month, I stopped answering calls. I'd see the name, Mom, Jenna, Uncle Steve, even cousins I hadn't heard from in years, and let it ring. I wasn't being petty. I was exhausted. Every conversation led to a request, some subtle, some obvious, all wrapped in familiarity. Like being family meant I owed them. It didn't happen all at once. It started small. $300 for Jenna because she was short on internet and groceries. Then $700 for my mom's car repairs. Uncle Steve called about a vague business opportunity and said I had extra to play with. I started tracking it out of habit, names, amounts, dates, whether they said thank you. Most didn't. By the end of the month, I'd sent over $15,000. Not counting smaller things I didn't track. I could afford it, but that wasn't the point. They hadn't cared about my success until it became useful. Then Jenna left a note under my door. She'd let herself into the building using the old code. The note started sweet, then asked for $5,000 to stabilize her life. She didn't ask if it was okay. The last line said, "You're doing so well now. You won't even feel it." That line stayed with me. When my mom called after that, she went straight to asking me to help Jenna again. I told her how much I'd already given. She paused, then said, "But you can afford it, can't you?" That was the moment I knew. I wasn't the daughter anymore. I was the wallet. I stopped picking up. I turned off my phone for the weekend. And then came the real shock. My boss called to tell me my mother had messaged him on LinkedIn, pitching Jenna for consulting work and saying I'd personally recommended her. I never had. That's when it became clear. This wasn't about family or support. It was about money, access, and connections. They weren't going to stop unless I did. I started writing a letter to myself, a reminder that I don't owe anyone my stability. Saying no used to make me feel guilty. Now it made me feel sane. When Jenna called again asking for $8,000 for a new studio, I said no. She hung up. 4 days later, she posted on Instagram. "Some people choose comfort over compassion." I didn't respond to the post. I didn't need to. What I didn't expect was the email from my parents 2 days later. The subject line read, "Exciting family opportunity." Inside was a 3-page PDF, formatted like a business pitch. They'd found a fixer-upper farmhouse in the Catskills and wanted to turn it into a family Airbnb. Pictures, timelines, projected returns. They wanted me to be the primary investor, $180,000 for purchase and renovation. There was no mention of repayment. Just the assumption I'd say yes. After everything I'd already given, I closed the email and didn't respond. The next day my mom called, then left a voicemail saying this was my chance to give back. I called her the following morning. I told her I loved them, but I wasn't investing, co-signing, or funding anyone anymore. I said I needed a break from being their financial plan. She went quiet, then said, "So you're choosing money over family?" I said no, I'm choosing peace. She hung up. The silence after that was cold and controlled. The group chat went quiet. I wondered if I'd finally been cut off. A week later, I got a handwritten note in the mail. "You've changed, but maybe we needed you too." It wasn't signed, but I knew who sent it. For the first time in a long while, I felt still, and that was enough. The noise faded once I stopped reacting. No apologies, just distance, and then slowly calm. Jenna reached out first. She apologized, simply and honestly. I forgave her. We met for coffee, talked about ordinary things, and didn't talk about money at all. Before leaving, she said she wanted to try doing things on her own. I nodded. That was all I wanted. A week later, my mom sent a birthday card. No guilt, no requests. Just, we're proud of you. I put it in a drawer. I didn't feel rushed to respond. Life grew quieter. I slept better. I stopped living on my phone. I signed up for things I'd always postponed. One night, I reread the letter I'd written to myself and realized I didn't need it anymore. It had already done its job. They know now what I built, what I protect, and that the version of me who stayed quiet and overgave is gone. What I want now isn't approval or attention, that it's peace, and that might be the biggest success I've ever had.